Good day, and thank you for joining us for another webinar brought to you by Rags to Riches, where we bring you ideas and owners who share their ideas about how to make your company grow and run more efficiently. Today, I'm bringing you one of my favorite topics, supersizing your supervisors, which I did a lot of at my old company, which was how I was able to grow, and we'll talk about that today. And then I decided to bring on board today a helper, Ines Cohron, who I know I have heard is one of my favorite guests, or your favorite guests of the people I bring on, who owns Total Home Cleaning. About a year and a half ago, Ines did a webinar about how she hated her supervisor, or hated her players, actually, all of her cleaners. And a year and a half later, she is in love with them, and last December did another webinar about how she learned to love them. And now today she's going to tell you how you learn to not take advantage of them, but certainly to maximize what they can contribute to her company, which has been beneficial to both Ines and her employees. So let's get started here. I believe that you are all here today not necessarily to supervise your supervisor, but rather to supersize your company. It is your company you want to grow. If the venue to do that is your supervisor, so be it. But you're really here to make your company grow. I'm going to tell you that I work with enough clients now after 6.5 years to know that the two recurring themes that I hear that people say keep them from growing is lack of time and lack of money. They either don't have enough money to implement what they need to grow, or they don't have enough time to make it happen. They think if they get bigger, it will be better. I will tell you, having done $1.98 million before I left my company, it's always a low profit margin. You make more net margin and have actually more bottom line cash flow percentage-wise when you're little than when you're big, because you don't have so much dead weight, not so much overhead. I mean, as soon as you start hiring somebody in the office, they bring you no money. So your profit goes down and down. So you need to take extreme not advantage of, but you need to definitely supersize and get the most out of your largest resource. And ironically, your largest resource is that employee, those people who you think stuck your company drive your net profit. If you look at them in a different way, you will find that your employee is your largest strength and not your largest weakness. Because if you get the most out of them, you can grow more without having to spend more money and make your bottom line larger. But in order to do that, you have to maximize the output from your current largest resource, your employees. You have to maximize what they're giving you. If you can do that, you're going to build a scalable foundation. It is like there are two ways to build a house large. You can either have a large one-story, so you have a huge foundation, and you'll bring it up so high it won't take as expensive a foundation because it's not going up as high. It won't take as much whatever they call it underneath, rebar, whatever it is. Or you can make it smaller and build it up, but then you need a stronger foundation. If you want to have a corporate ladder type situation, you need a very strong foundation, and it needs to be scalable without spending more money. So bottom line here is, I just had some people out to the ranch for Hill Country Harvest last week, and then they always bring me back to reality. I wasn't going to talk a bit about structures of companies and models, but that brought me to the reality that I need to. Before you can supersize your supervisors, you have to have a supervisor. Many companies do not. Of the 8 companies I had out here, 7, 3 of them weren't on a supervisor structure. They were either solos or they were teams, but they hadn't named anybody ultimately responsible between the 2 or 3 people. And so therefore they had no supervisors to supersize. So let's talk first a little bit about structure. This is a company that has 19 employees. I believe this is how many people you need to have cleaning for your company before you can afford 2 key people in your office. My structure was on the top, reporting to me. I had a customer service salesperson who also scheduled. They basically managed the office, nothing to do with the field operations. I had a supplies person who took care of all the supplies, because when you have cleaning that many houses, I would guess we were probably running about 35 houses a day at this time. You're cleaning a lot, so you have a lot of supplies you need to get prepared. And I always had a relief person, because if anybody was absent, I plugged in a relief person rather than mess up the structure of all my teams because one person was absent. I was very team-bound. Each one of the teams had a supervisor. So team 1, supervisor 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they had 2 partners that reported to them. So who reported to me were your 6 team supervisors, and the supplies, customer service and relief, or 6, 7, 8, 9 people reported directly to me. I did 9 reviews. I sat down with these people individually. I did sit with the 6 teams 1 time a week with all 3 people, but as far as day-to-day, I had no interaction with the partners. That helped me to have that structure. And then I brought in my first field manager, which I will show you in a little while. But I didn't have enough money here to bring in anybody to touch these people in the field. I kept the field people and passed off the customers first. Some owners keep the customers and pass off the field people. The reason I did it the way I did it was because I have always felt the external customer, the client, is much easier to get than the internal client, which is your cleaner. So I put my value and my time into the cleaner because the customers seem to just come walking in the door. And they still certainly do today with the advent of the internet. I do believe that's still the easiest for this business. If you run solos or you run teams that do not report to one another, partners, then you basically have 16 cleaners all reporting to you. If you're solos, you have to meet with each one of them individually. You could, if they're teams, you can still meet with the team, but you're going to have everybody asking you questions because there's no structure in between to ask you. So you have those 16 cleaners and the other 3. You have 19 people reporting to you, 19 reviews to do, and now you can finally bring somebody on. But they will also understand a brand new person is going to have 16 people reporting to them rather than 6. So it's also more difficult when you're trying to develop your field managers. To see what it looks like when you get to a structure of $2 million or 1.98 like we did, I had 59 employees at this time, but my job got considerably easier because as you see, I had 3 field managers reporting to me, a customer service sales manager, 2 customer service sales managers at this time because we were so large it took 2 of them. I actually had 5 people reporting to me. The field managers, by the way, did each have a relief person. I am not able to make these beautiful flow charts. My boyfriend did the first 2. He didn't have time to do this one, but I wanted you to see how this lays out. I have 5 people reporting to me. The field managers have the 6 supervisors reporting to them, and the supervisors have the people reporting to them. So my field managers are still only managing 6 supervisors and a relief person. I am managing, actually the supplies person also reported to me and I didn't have them in there. But I am dealing with 5 to 6 people. I can manage my people in 10% of my time a week and give 90% of my time to being a leader when you talk management versus leadership. And my leadership brought our company to the community. So at this time I spend $10,000 a year on advertising and our phone never stopped ringing because I was a leader in the community and that's what my role was. A lot more fun, too, by the way, folks. So this is the structure I would use. In order to have this structure, of course, you first have to have supervisors, and you have to be willing to empower your supervisors. If you give them the power to make decisions in the field, when they hit the field, you will have increased efficiency. When adjustments need to be made because the bathrooms are far dirtier in this first time in home than you expected them to be, and maybe one of the 3 people or 2 people has to jump in and help them. It doesn't wait until the end for that decision to be made, where now we've got 3 people cleaning and 1 bathroom left to be cleaned because nobody coordinated in the first place. The supervisor is responsible for getting that job done with excellent, outstanding, remarkable quality in the time it's supposed to be done in. They will step in there right away and take control. It's too late by the time they get to the end and they're all on the phone calling you going, oh, what should we do? So give them the power to do this and teach them how to do it. Change their name from team lead to supervisor because I believe in my heart it does give them more power in the eyes of the client and their partners if they're a supervisor. To lead means you lead. To supervise means you're ultimately responsible for the results. If you lead, you bring the problem back to the office and go, I don't know what happened here, Ines, but we just didn't get it done in time and we missed stuff. If you're a supervisor, you don't bring that problem back. While you're out in the field, you make sure you don't miss things and you rearrange things to get done on time because that's your job. Teach your supervisors to do quality checks. I cannot believe that there are still companies out there running around, and when they even have supervisors, with a quality assurance person checking the homes to make sure they're cleaned okay. That's the role of the supervisor. When they get done with the home, the partners pack up the car, and the supervisor walks the house, checks things, leaves a quality control checklist, and you're done. Don't pay that overhead money to somebody to run around and check houses. Bring your people into the office 1 or 2 times a week rather than every day, which means you have to learn to trust your people. If you can't trust them to have your keys overnight, you can't trust them to have your keys at all. They can make copies during the day just like they can make them at night. I ask some people, why do you bring them in every day? They're saying because they want to go down over the new jobs, they want to go over the work orders with them, make sure they understand them. I'm saying write it down on the work order so it's clearly understood. Why are you reading this to people? This is not scalable. When we had 52 cleaners working for us, if we would have brought them into the office every single day, we never would have gotten to that level because there'd be too much hubbub in the office every day. We hated Tuesdays and Thursdays when we saw them. We entrusted our supervisors to take the work orders with them, read them, and delegate and manage those responsibilities to their partners. That's how you get big. So make sure your keys and files are organized. Nothing can be entrusted to the memories. It all has to be written down, and this will make your company scalable. But let's go to our company resident expert who implemented empowering her supervisor, Ines. And first of all, most people know you, but Ines, let's go over a few of your things right now, your statistics, so they know that you have some credibility here. Tell us a little bit about total home cleaning.
Okay, so our company was I started it back in 2004. We have about 230 clients, 232 clients, 16 full-time cleaners. We work in teams of 3. We pay by the job, and we pay the travel time same rate as we pay for the cleaning hours. And we provide company vehicles. So we have 5 vehicles right now. We are getting ready to form a 6th team. So we have the 6th vehicle recently we purchased. I have 1 person full-time in the office, 1 person part-time. And I'm here in the office, as you said, doing some of what you call field manager, taking care of some of field manager responsibilities, as well as doing some sales as far as networking outside the office.
Very good. Welcome, Ines. Thank you again for joining us. You take so much time doing this. So, Ines, how in your company do you determine who's going to be the supervisor? This is a huge role.
Yes. Okay, so the main criteria is for the supervisor to be able to communicate with both their team members. We have a large Spanish-speaking population that does cleaning in our area. So our supervisors have to be able to communicate with their team members, and they need to be able to communicate as well with the client. So being bilingual is more important than whether they have any kind of degree. Obviously, they don't need to be college educated. We do interviews for our supervisors. We post a job, so whether it's an internal or an external person applying for the supervisor position, and I'm much more inclined to promote from within if that's possible, because as you know, that builds morale, and it's part of them seeing a ladder for themselves within the company. And I use your 25-question interview format. I take detailed notes while I'm doing that. And then there are 2 reasons why that works well for us. One is, it's going to give them, behavior type questions that they can answer and can help me assess whether they're the right candidate for the position. It also, it's important if they get that promotion, that I have something to refer back to when they have an issue come up. For example, if they have, let's say, 2 of their team members arguing, I go back to that interview because that was one of the questions. How will you manage that situation? Can you give me an example of what you've done in the past and how will you manage it? I ask them how they will manage stress. because again, that's one of your questions, and why that's important is sooner or later, they're going to feel the stress, and especially, you know, if they've gone from team member to team supervisor, all of a sudden feeling that responsibility, I need to take them back to, you know, when we interviewed and we talked about stress, these were some of the ways you told me you would manage stress. Is this what you're doing? Do you remember us talking about it? What's different? So I can keep taking them back to that starting point where they're most positive and most want the job. I switched over, as you know, from calling them team leaders to calling them supervisors. And I broadened the scope of what the position would be for them and what the benefits of the position would be for them. So I said the reason we're going from team leader to team supervisor is because I would truly want you to take on additional responsibilities, like doing the reviews of your team members. And so our paperwork, a lot of it still says team leader, but in our discussions, I refer to them as supervisor. There are a few other things that I think the process we use does address. We were talking about jealousy, and one of the things that posting the job and going through the formal interview process does is it does reduce, nobody knows what was said first of all, in that interview. And you know, except you, the owner, and the individual applying. But everybody knows who actually stepped forward and raised their hand. So a team member can't say, well, she gave preferential treatment to somebody else if they didn't actually step up and apply for the position. So I think that manages some of that jealousy. The other thing is, again, going back to the interview process, when I give them the decision, so I had 2 people post. There were originally 3 people who were posting for the job. One thought it over and backed out, and she was fully qualified to take the position. The other 2 went through the interview process, and when I went back and told the one who didn't get the position my reasons, one of them was I referred back to the interview questions. And I said, look, you're comfortable being a supervisor on your current team with houses and clients you know. I'm forming a new team. That's going to take you so out of your comfort zone. That was one of the reasons that played into why I think you need to develop some more over the next 6 months. And then, you know, so that is part of the learning process, and the whole, and the process itself helps to develop each individual person.
Perfect. I do think it's great. There's nothing like posting for these positions. I remember the first time I did it, and it was kind of funny actually, because I mean, they were so excited, but what happened is it backfired because they had to go home, and they called me and say, I can't do my last house today because I got to go home and change clothes and get dressed up for my interview. And I'm like, no, wait a second here, this is backfiring on me. But it's exactly what you want, because they were so excited and so pumped, and they really did come in. I mean, you looked at these people and went, wow. I mean, there's something behind that cleaner that you might not have seen before. There's nothing like dressing for success, let's face it. So Ines, once you have decided who they are and who they're going to be named, how do you empower your supervisors daily? I believe that that is the difference between making this whole thing work or not work, because if you empower them, then it's like little mini franchises and you don't have to deal with that team. So how do you actually make this? I mean, it's one thing to name them as supervisors. It's another one to say, okay, I'm going to give up my Ines control factor here and actually hand it over to the supervisor. How do you do that, Ines?
Okay, so I do a few things. When supervisors at a base level, you know, I go through, and I think we're going to talk about this a little later, I go through a training session with them. Part of that includes they have to manage the efficiency and the quality in the home. So that means when they go out as a team, they have to divide up the responsibilities, who's doing what, to make sure they all end up in the same place at the same time and thus maximize efficiency. So they're making all those calls with the staff. When they call with the office, the biggest change for me in terms of how I think about things is, or the habit that I've really had to change the most is to go from giving the answer to getting them to give me the suggestion as to, you know, I keep repeating things like, okay, you've identified there's a problem. What potential solutions do you think, what avenues can we take to solve this problem? And you'd be surprised how many times someone will step up with a great solution. Another thing is, so another example would be, you know, we had all the snow and ice, and one of our team leaders, who's also the driver on the team, called Melissa, my office manager, and said, I have nowhere to park. If I park in this client's driveway, I'm not going to be able to back out. I'm going to get stuck. And she actually had gotten stuck at another driveway, so she knew what she'd be getting into. And she said, if I park on the street, I know something's going to happen to the car because it's just too narrow, and so on and so forth. And here's a picture. Meanwhile, I'm at a dealership taking care of a car, and I get this picture from Melissa saying she doesn't know what to do. Next thing, as I'm getting the picture, I'm getting a phone call from Margarita saying, this is what's going on, and I'm willing to park the car on the street, but I don't think something could happen to the car, and I think you should know because I'm concerned. So what that was telling me was that she wanted me to take responsibility and say, listen, it's okay, park it on the street. If something happens, it's not your fault. It's going to be what it's going to be. But that's, as a supervisor, I didn't want to give her that answer. So my answer to her was, I understand you have a situation. I'm not there to guide you, but I have full faith and confidence that you're going to be able to solve this problem. So Margarita, really, I'm confident you will make the right decision and you will do what you need to do. You have my confidence. Hung up. Yes. Did she find a place to park? She went, you know, she unloaded, she parked 2 blocks down, and everything was fine. But that goes back to, in terms of developing that person, making sure they're taking responsibility for what's happening. And, you know, if there's a mistake made, we learn from it, but each person has to take responsibility, particularly your supervisors. So going back to always asking questions instead of giving answers. Quality checks, we do count on our supervisors to do the quality checks. If I start to get a couple of complaints in a given 2-week period, one of the things, or with a new supervisor, what I will have them do is fill out a quality worksheet where they check off physically that they've checked all of these 20, 30 items at each of their houses. But we do have Melissa, who's my office manager, go out during the week, and her goal is to check 6 houses in a week. And then finally, we did talk about, on the previous slide, about changing the title from lead to supervisor. And going through that, as, you know, as I mentioned, emphasizing to them how this opens doors for them. This isn't just about a pay increase. It's not about moving up here. It's actually about what it can do for them outside of this organization, that they can say, yes, I was able to route houses, so I've got some logistical routing responsibility. I am able to problem solve, and I'm able to do reviews for my employees, for my direct reports. And, you know, that's, so making that benefit, when you make the shift, make sure that they see this not as extra work or that you're pushing off, but that it's a growth and developmental opportunity for them.
And it truly is. Having been taught how to become a supervisor rather than just getting the title, and knowing how to do a review and being able to talk that lingo in a future interview, even though we don't want to lose our people, we will we will hold on to who we have if they see the people who are there moving up, not just moving out, not going to another cleaning company, but getting a better job than they had. My people didn't leave me because they wanted the skills, they wanted to learn the skills that my people who left me that had got great jobs were able to get, and they learned those skills from me. So you're going to lose some people, and that's what you want to do. You want to make sure they're better people when they left you than when they got you. So congratulations for teaching that, Ines. Other things that you want to teach your supervisors to be and things that you can do in meetings is talk about how they should treat their new hires. It's like when a new person comes on board, and if there are 3 people, do they put them in the back seat and not even know what their name is by the end of the day? And believe me, unless you teach them to do this differently, they will do just that, and you will take all this time bringing them on and doing the orientation right, and then you hand them off to the supervisors, and boom, they're gone in 2 days. Because you never taught that supervisor the value they have, the impact they have on this new person. So you need to teach them how they should motivate their team members and why they should motivate their team members. That as they go through the 5 steps that an employee goes through in growth of a company, from safety to trust to intimacy to goals to tasks to mission to vision, their job as a supervisor gets easier, more rewarding, and they actually make more money. When a team is in the safety step and they're going through one person after another because they've never built the trust or intimacy level, so they're rolling through new people, their jobs are much harder. Let's face it, there's nothing like being with the same 2 people on a cleaning team for 6 months or a year. So the more and then you start getting better tips because your cleaning is better and you're all happy and you're giggling when you go in the house, so the clients love you, so they tip you big because they were in a bad mood when you got there, and now a bunch of cleaners made them feel better. They're going to tip you. That's goals, mission, vision. Teach your supervisors why it's valuable to take the time the first day to make this person feel safe and stay there, and make it feel like it's their responsibility and their reward when they make it, because you simply have to train another person for a day or 2. They got to start all over again day after day after day. Let them understand this. And then teach them how to interact with their clients so that they are comfortable, again, with their clients, they keep their clients, they satisfy their clients, which ultimately gives them all tips, and that's what we're all in this game for. So Ines, what do you teach your supervisors, and how do you go about preparing them for this position of supervisor so they can be successful?
Sure. So when a new supervisor is promoted, I spend a Saturday with them, and I split up the day. Half the day is spent more on management, so what they're going to do in the mornings, what they're going to do in the afternoons, what they're going to do at the houses, what they're expected to know. And then the other half is spent on more leadership, and that's all around communicating with both the external and the internal client. As you know, as owners, no one gave us a manual, and some of it we had to learn as to how to deal with both the internal and external client, how to respond to situations. That's why I do role-playing as part of that training. So we role play all sorts of situations. How do you talk to someone who's too slow? What do you say when someone rolls their eyes and walks away from you and you're trying to explain something? How do you react? How do you manage the tough situations? We also cover a couple of things. One is the 7 habits of highly effective cleaners. We have done also some of the other video training that you would find on Rags to Riches, how to deal with difficult clients, and we have little discussions around that. We cover, then there are also what I would call brief education moments. So the brief education moments don't necessarily have anything to do, and we've also done seminars this year that are a lot longer that have nothing to do with cleaning. Okay, so one example I like to talk about and think about is my senior supervisor was in the office giving some feedback to a new hire, and everybody was out there, and I didn't need to be in here because I know she can do that job. She can give the feedback. So I was out there, and I said, I just want to go through a brief education moment on how to shake hands. And I explained to them what it means to have your thumb up, your hand like this, your hand like that, how not to have a wet hand, when you shake someone's hand, if you've been holding a drink. So the whole thing took about, I'm going to say, a minute and a half, 90 seconds, I don't remember, 90 seconds maybe. And I finished, and then all of a sudden, they break out into applause. And it just keeps reminding me, that type of situation, of how much people want to be able to learn. And this, you have business people who don't know how to properly shake a hand. So how much more valuable, that little basic thing can be to your staff, who's not going to get that anywhere else. And I do think that the more people feel like they're learning and getting developed, the less likely they are to leave your company, because even if they're not all that excited about the hourly pay, if they feel like they're growing, again, it's going to give them something else to think about, because it's not a glamorous job. Once per month, I've been doing it more like once every 2 months. We have a bigger staff meeting. Actually, this year we've been pretty good about being once every month. We have a seminar. So the last seminar I had was on the topic of nutrition and how to basically, have the best nutrition when you're very busy working a full-time job. Got a lot of positive feedback. Everybody learned something. But before I even did that, at the beginning of the year, I did send out a survey with a number of different topics. So we've had a chiropractor come in, talk about not only back safety, but he did a free evaluation on a big screen with everybody here. We've done, and that sort of relates to the cleaning, but of course the nutrition one doesn't. We have another one coming up on how to have your child succeed in school. Again, I read a lot of books on a lot of different topics, that information and those resources aren't always easily available to my staff. So those are some of the things I do. And then I do ongoing meetings with my team supervisors, and those are separate from the full staff meeting.
Very good. The handshake thing, as simple as it might be, is something that could create a person to get a job. And again, I'm not encouraging you to train your people to get other jobs. But imagine the difference between them going into their next job interview and shaking that hand with a nice, firm, strong handshake versus what they might have done before you taught them Ines. So your servant leadership skills are coming through, and that is your job as an owner, is to serve these people to be better, and I really congratulate you on that. Supervisors doing partner reviews is huge. It's a time and money saver. Again, if you look at that structure, if you're doing 16, 19 reviews, you are doing more than one a month. And if you look at my reviews, they're very detailed. They take a very long time to do. Whereas here, you're going to diminish that by 2 per team, which helps immensely. Secondly, I have the supervisor review it or do it, and then I review it and correct it, because there are some areas that they don't know. They don't track the attendance. I do. So some areas I have to, and some of those I even fill out before I even give to them. But the reason I started this is I was calling, like Cassandra, I'll never forget Cassandra, who's very vocal, and screams every time I call her, I'm trying to clean houses and you keep bothering me. But I was trying to do a partner review, and of course with every aspect that comes up, because mine are so detailed, I would have to call Cassandra and say, okay, is she friendly with the clients? Does she do this? Is she helpful? Blah, blah. I don't know this partner. I'm not working with her every day. So after Cassandra yelled at me about the 5th time, I said, you know what, Cassandra, come on in here after work and pick this up. You can do it, and I'll approve it. And that did turn out so much better, because you understand that I don't know what's going on. It would be like me giving my child their report card. The teacher has to do that. They're with them during the day. You need a consistent and objective review form, however, if you're going to have your supervisors do this, because they all have to be using the same benchmark, the same parameter, or you're going to get stung for inequality because you haven't taught your supervisors how to objectively give a review. So let's take this back to our resident superstar, Ines, who actually called me one day and said, I'm teaching my supervisors how to do these reviews. I'm done. So Ines, how did you do this and how did it go?
Okay. So just to reiterate, I was so sick and tired of doing reviews, I could not wait to hand them off to my supervisors. But I knew they didn't have the training, right? I've been through corporate. I knew how to do reviews. I knew that they had to be, that you had to spend time on them and think them through before you could really do them effectively. You have to have concrete examples. You can't talk about bad attitudes. You have to talk about bad behavior, all those type of things, right? So about a year and a half ago is when I implemented, when I just said I can't do another review. And I got my supervisors, and that's also about the time when I was transitioning from my supervisors from what we used to call the team leader position to the team supervisor position. And again, to your point, calling that supervisor to ask them 5 or 10 questions about this person's performance. To launch that, I did change the format of the review process. I used to use a 2-page review, which kind of took me a while to fill, and in retrospect was nowhere near as good as the review that I got from you, which is much longer, but it's an easier process. It's very simple questions you answer, like if it's a team supervisor review, does she answer the phone most of the time? And it gives you, you can rank it, I think, 0 to 5, whatever it is. 0 never answers the phone when you call her. 5 always answers the phone, because there's a value to that, right? Ability to control damages in the home. Okay, now, we have a little book where we track damages by team. We can quickly look that up. But it's longer because it's so much more specific. Going back to the supervisor training, I do go through the review that they're going to receive later on. And they get this review twice, once at 3 months and once at a full year, because they know what to expect. And if they know how they're going to be evaluated and how their pay is going to be tied to getting 5s on these different areas, it helps so much more keeping them focused on, yeah, I better have that phone with me and answer it. So I'm not saying it solves everything. You can't expect them to remember everything that they're going to be reviewed on. It's my responsibility to kind of reiterate that, but that's part of what that review process does. So with my team supervisors, I started off with a senior supervisor. So she was the first one to start doing reviews. And she's the first one that I trained. And the way that I do the training with this is similar to training on anything else. First, I show the person how to do it. That's the written part, and that's the spoken part. Then I ask them to do it. We role play them doing it with me, and I'm the person getting the review, and I'll give them some tough answers and see how they respond, like, I don't agree with your rating at all, and it doesn't work for me, that type of thing, so they know how to respond. And then the third part is they do it, and I watch them, and they do a real they do a real review, and I watch them after the review's done. They get some feedback. I think this went really well. Just remember, I think in some areas you weren't as specific as you could have been. I think you need to be, with my senior supervisor, my biggest feedback to her is you need to leave these people in a better, more positive, like you got to pump them up, unless they just did so poorly that it's somebody that's probably headed out the door. And that's probably like the biggest thing I need to emphasize with them is how to balance out those, the positive feedback with the negative feedback. And that's now we go through that. Now, if I have a new supervisor, clearly, the process we have to go through this all over again. I look at the written review that they write for their team members, and I ask them, how did you arrive at this? Why did you give all 5s? Is she really outstanding in every area? I mean, is she really ready to be like the next supervisor? And so that's pretty much the implementation process for the reviews.
Very good. And it takes a while to do this. You can't just hand it to them and expect it to get back. One thing to teach them, and I think Ines mentioned this, is if you don't give them a 5, and I have this rule when I'm doing my any reviews, if you don't give this person a 5, which is outstanding, you have to tell them what they could do to improve to get to that 5 level. So it makes you think things through. You can't just give somebody a 3 because you're their supervisor, you don't really care for them, so they're never going to be outstanding, because maybe they are, and it forces you to take a different look at things, as well as in the opposite direction. So I believe we already discussed this, so I'm going to slide by this slide. Some of the things that you can do with your supervisors, and there are a lot of them, is, I'm going to go through some of this. If your supervisors are bilingual, then you're going to be able to bring them into the office and do things. Some of these are more than Ines has gotten to, so I'm going to go through ideas that my supervisors actually did without Ines now, because she's still got to get her empowerment together to give them this much power. But my supervisors actually called their clients for the next day and gave them the window of arrival time. I know in today's world you can have the internet, of course, call and do the reminder calls, but I don't know if the internet is sophisticated enough, or any software is sophisticated enough. If a client wants that 2-hour window, they can give them the actual 2-hour window. I'm not familiar with that. So we had, when we were doing 95 homes a day, anywhere between 30 clients who wanted to know the 2-hour window of arrival, which was great for us rather than giving them an exact time. We didn't have the keys for them, or if we had the keys, they still wanted the window. Who can make that window of arrival better than the supervisor? And I remember calling and setting this all up, and of course Cassandra coming in again one day and going, why'd you put this woman there? That's exactly when her baby sleeps. Well, another client had called and had to change their time, so I had to rearrange everything. And I said, Sandra, I don't know when her baby sleeps. I said, you do, so you start making these phone calls. So I truly, until I had about 30, when I crossed the 30 mark, I took those calls back in the office. I'm going to tell you, it was the stupidest thing I ever did. My supervisors do know the schedule better, and they could make these calls. And when you start thinking about making 30 calls a day, you're talking a couple of hours of a person in the office having to make these calls, where if you split them out between the supervisors, it didn't take them very long at all at night to make those calls. So one of the things you can do, if you want to be scalable, 95 jobs per day, as I said, it's very hard. It takes a lot of time every day for a person in that office who could be doing other things like making outbound sales calls rather than making time calls. It also develops a respect from the client to the supervisor, because they're calling to make scheduling times. There's a whole different respect the client gives the supervisor when they're talking about things that have to do with things other than cleaning toilets. I mean, they have enough authority from this company to schedule a time, and they trust the supervisor enough to believe they're going to make that time. So it's a whole different level that you bring this to, which makes the supervisor's job so much nicer when they walk in the home and the client treats them kind of like a pseudo-owner rather than a toilet cleaner. So that makes the supervisor stay longer, because they really like their job and they really like their clients. As far as stealing clients, and that's what I heard, of course, every time I have a group out here of owners discussing all this empowerment, is they could steal your clients. And Kelly Norwood said it the best. Kelly Weber said the best this weekend when she said, stealing is something of the heart. It's an attitude of the heart. Whether you empower them or not, if they come here and feel that you're making all kinds of money because they're picking up your checks or they're seeing this and they're going to steal your clients, they're going to steal them. Whether or not you empower them or not, as a matter of fact, they'll probably be less likely to steal them because like their job more, you do empower them. Don't keep that from making yourself and your people successful. Outbound calls. If you're not calling back your previous service clients, people who had you and canceled you, people who used you one time but never used you again, people who called for prices, if you are not doing this, and I would venture to say probably 1 in every 500 cleaning services are doing it, and those who are very successful. Ines did 15 calls and got a repeat client and hasn't done it since. I'm saying find somebody in your field who is very bilingual, who likes to make outbound phone calls. You know what? It's kind of fun. If you ask, rather than saying, does anybody want to make telemarketing calls, say, hey, anybody want to call back our one times and see if we can increase our base? If you say it that way, you might have people who will do it. Bridget Rendos is a client of mine in Squeaky Clean, has Squeaky Clean in Griffin, Georgia. We've been working together maybe 4 months, 3 months. But she couldn't get out of the field. She was quality checking. Finally, one day, I just basically screamed at her and said, stop it, leave them alone. Not only did she leave them alone, but now she's brought in one of her people to make outbound phone calls, and in the last 2 weeks has signed up 4 repeat clients from calling back clients that were one-time. Reach out there to your people. You can't bring a person on full-time to do this. You don't have enough resources, nor do you have enough outbounds, one-times, and cancels to call. But you can bring in one of your own people a couple of hours a day, 3 times a week, and what you would do to increase their paycheck would make them love you even more. You keep the money in-house, you get more clients, and you get somebody ready to take over your office position. It is a win-win-win-win-win. It's a testing ground. So think about stepping out there and reaching out to the people you have, and if you don't have them, think about hiring a little differently when you bring them in the door in the first place. Have your supervisors perform the first interview. In my office, because we went through a lot of people that you don't necessarily hire, I had my supervisors come in after they were done with their last job. I try to maybe book them lighter a day when I had interviews scheduled, and they would do the first interview. If they didn't have a rapport, why should I waste my time? I'm not going to work with them every day. If Sandra didn't like something, it wasn't going to work. I'm going to tell you that right now. Also, that gives them the immediate first-person influence. Whoever interviews you the first time, I believe, is who you will always look at in that company as the person who gave you a break, and you will always look at them as a person of influence in your life as the new applicant. So it gave them that immediate rapport they needed to become the team supervisor, that immediate respect. They interviewed them, I interviewed them, we hired them, I did the orientation, they hand them back to the very first person who ever interviewed them. That respect is automatically there. I do want to speak a little bit to training. If you have your supervisors trained, many people say, well, I empower my supervisors, they do the training. If indeed what you do is throw a person out with them that is brand new and do not give them an extra body to help with that day, they're not a trainer at all. They are having to watch this new person who's not getting any decent training and then work even harder because, as you all know, if you have a new person in the field, it takes longer with 3 people than it used to take with 2. So don't make that supervisor train and have to make up for the slack because nobody's accomplishing anything, and no, you're not empowering them. You are overwhelming them, and it never works. New hire evaluation form. There are numerous categories on this. I want to make sure that you are all using one if you are empowering your supervisors, because once you hand them off, they still have to give feedback. We have a new hire evaluation form that covers about 10 or 15 things. I think, Ines, do you use this?
I absolutely use it. It's fantastic. I'm sorry?
Why don't you go through this slide in the process?
Okay, so I used your form. I've made some modifications to it, but it's essentially the same form, and it goes through 10 days. And my supervisors know that when a new person is working with them, that they will need to fill out this form, and it covers things like behavioral responses, cooperation, appearance, safety, did they wear their slip-resistant shoes, So it goes through, just a bunch of different criteria. The basics. You want to make sure that when you start off, again, people know what's expected of them. And it measures how they're doing on time. So on efficiency, are they consistent from house to house? If you show them X, will they remember at the next house X and then at the following house? So, through the first 10 days, we go through that. So, that allows for you to give better feedback to that new hire. This morning, I went through it with one of my new hires, and I said, and this is key. One of the things I like to do is to have a new hire work with a couple of different team supervisors, because not every supervisor is working and is skilled at doing an evaluation, and they're not always equal, right? So someone could give, like this new hire, I saw that on safety, she got rated very high, but I was really upset the other day with both my senior supervisor and my office manager, because this girl had been working for us 2 weeks and was still wearing shoes that were not the required slip-resistant shoes. And I emphasize, this is your responsibility. I shouldn't have to bring her into the office to talk to her, and I shouldn't be doing the write-up on this, because you guys have to take responsibility for that. So having, and when I looked at, the feedback form, she had gotten lots of 4s, lots of 5s, and on safety, only my senior supervisor had given her a lower score of 2 because she wasn't wearing her slip-resistant shoes. So one of the things I can now realize, I have to go back to the other supervisors and say, are you really looking at this? And if I see lots of outstandings in the first 2 weeks, again, it becomes a training issue. If I see all 5s from the supervisor, the senior supervisor has a 3, a 4, a 5, a 2. You start to see where maybe it's the supervisor who needs to get more training around how to do evaluations. And again, going back to that new hire, I can say, listen, this issue, we saw it happen with 2 different supervisors. It repeated itself. When they write down, the supervisor writes down, this person is slow, I go back to that supervisor and say, okay, I'm glad that you are timing what's going on and that you know that you're slow because of a new person, but what's she doing? Why is she slow? Because their role is to be able to watch that person through the training. That's one of the things that my senior supervisor does really well. I put a new person with her. She doesn't abandon her in the bathrooms. She's going to watch that person and see, does she come back out to get rags? Does she take everything out of the bathroom when she goes to clean it? Is that the reason why she's slow? Is it that she's having a hard time identifying what's clean from what's dirty? Maybe she's cleaning the walls, or she's doing things that we don't need to do. If I ask my supervisor and their answer is, I don't know, she just takes a long time, I said, I start to question, are they watching that person? We had one person, and I went to my senior supervisor and I said, we don't know why she's slow, because neither one of the team supervisors can really tell me why she's slow. Well, one day with my senior supervisor, and she realizes she's closing the door when she's doing the bathroom. And she's on the cell phone, which, the company rule is keep the cell phone in the car. So now I can go back to my other 2 supervisors and say, you know what? I'm not sure why she was comfortable doing that, why she felt that she could do it when she's worked with your team before. Is this what she's doing? These are the kinds of things that you guys need to be on top of. So those are the categories. We look at, the skill, the will, skill being, can they physically do the job? And if so, are they using the system? the core training, and which is the rags to riches. If you're not familiar with the core, is the cleaning system we use. And then do they have the will? So will is reflected in, it could be comments they make like, I'm not going to speed up because I don't want to be the last one mopping. And you hear this type of stuff, and then you can start to respond to it appropriately. One of the things with the girl, young lady this morning, is when I talked to her about why she didn't have the right shoes, she said, well, I haven't bought them because I was just wondering, I wanted to make sure it was the right thing, that it didn't have a steel toe. I said, no, we've only asked that you get a slip-resistant shoe, and, here's where you buy it, and, a couple different places where you can buy it. That was the first time I spoke to her. The second time I spoke to her, she said, I just want to make sure I don't make a mistake, and, she's being very sweet. And I called her on it. I said, listen, you're way too smart for us to be having this conversation, okay? A second time. You understand what slip-resistant shoes on it. I'm not going to treat you like someone you are not, which is you are a very intelligent woman. In the review, in her 10-day evaluation, that's one of the things that came up. I said, I'm going to hold you to your highest potential. And that means you cannot give me answers like you gave me with regard to slip-resistant shoes that you weren't sure after Melissa had asked you to get the right shoes when you were hired, and after we'd already had that conversation, and she took it, she gets it. And she gets that the expectation is there, and that I am going to hold everybody to what their potential is. And so, some examples of how that works for us.
Perfect, Ines. And that is the use of the evaluation form, so I'm glad Ines went through it because it's very effective. A couple of final words, Ines, that you might have as far as getting your supervisors supersized and what it does to help you manage your business?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I like to think about it is, and this is what happens to the company, what happens to our people and the way the company runs if I were in the hospital for the next 2 weeks. And over the last 10 years, I have been hospitalized a couple of times for a week each. And, the ability of the company to run itself with minimal involvement from you for as long as possible, it's a great reflection of how well those supervisors are doing. I think the other thing is the systems. So the systems go to the forms that they know where to go to, do this or do that. And I think that could be a whole seminar, Sharon, is how to build your systems. Developing the people, making sure they see what the benefits are for them, and promoting a long-term employment status with you by giving them the opportunity for growth.
It does. It gives them a tremendous opportunity for growth, and some of your key people will someday make a big chunk of money, because when you're doing a couple million, you don't mind paying $60,000 to the person that keep it going. But in my opinion, the survival in this business for a long time is the biggest thing, because Ines and I were talking this morning. I mean, she is too young to sell her business for $1 million or $2 million right now and be fine for the rest of her life. I'm 64. I can tell you it takes a lot of money to retire without changing your lifestyle. And why do you want to retire if you have to change your lifestyle? So you have to make it fun while you're there, because it's hard to make this much money in any other business, because we all make a lot of money when you make it to the top. There's no doubt about it. But it's hard to save money. So you're still going to sell for a bunch in the end. What's your goal? To have fun while you're there. There is nothing more fun than 90% leadership and 10% management. The other 90% of the management, the junk, the disciplinary actions, all the junk you hate to do, the almost not yelling but managing people, is not fun. It is much more fun to lead them than manage them. All gets done by the people who report to you if you're tiered. So your goal is to get a leadership model going and empower your bottom foundation, which is your supervisors. Then you go out and do your own advertising, which is a lot cheaper, so when you do have time off from work, you can take wonderful vacations because your bottom line is stronger. This is building a scalable model for growth that will give you money, it will give you peace of mind, it will give you a quality lifestyle. So supersize your supervisors, you will automatically supervise your company. Ines, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us. I know it's been a full hour, but I think hopefully it has been an education of things you can implement immediately, so it's an hour well spent. Hope to see you at the next webinar, and before that, I hope to see some of you at Hill Country Harvest. It's going to be a beautiful spring bluebonnet season, so go check it out. We already have some slots filled, so make sure you go to www.successmadeeasy.com, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Ines.
Thank you, Sharon.